Welcome to the 2014 Warren Business Forum, hosted by the Eastern Nazarene College Business Society. My name is Christina St. Pierre, and I am a junior here at ENC. This is Quentin Moore, and he is also a junior here at ENC, and we are glad to have you here with us tonight.
We have a great program lined up for you this evening, highlighted by our guest speaker, Kurt Heckman. As I look out at all you tonight, it's great to see all of our students, faculty, alumni, and Quincy business professionals. I'd like to invite you all to take the opportunity tonight to network and fellowship together. Now, I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Corliss McGee, President of Eastern Nazarene College. President McGee.
Thank you very much, and let me add my words of welcome. This is a great group tonight. This is a fun event for us because it brings several different constituencies together for one event. We have the students in our traditional business programs here, the Business Society that has put this on, and many of their colleagues. But this also brings together our two campuses so that we have our adult students who are in classes at night that come for this event, and we have a large group of them here tonight, and we're very, very thrilled to have them here with us. Also, members of the business community that are joining us tonight and alums that are here. So thank you each and every one for being here. Thank you for taking the time. And I would like to I know that there will be a more formal presentation on this, but I'd like to just say my word of thanks to Warren Lightning Rod and the individuals there who are with us tonight, and we'll have recognition a little bit later on. But thank you for making this event possible for us through the years, and especially tonight. And it's also great to have Kurt Heckman here with us. I will mention, for some of you that have been coming to this event for several years, this is a little different format. And normally we are in the Commons in the cafeteria, and we have it all set up for the program. We had an outstanding event happen this year, which was a total remodel from top to bottom of the Commons, and that is an outstanding project, but it makes it a little bit more difficult to set it up for groups like this. So we are happy to be in here tonight and hope you will enjoy that environment. We'll move in there for dinner in just a little while. So thank you for being here, and let me open in prayer. Father, we thank you for the opportunities that you give us, and we thank you for the opportunity of Christian Liberal Arts College, where we can learn the principles of business, but also learn what it means to have a Christian worldview, what it means to think like you think, and how that makes a difference in not only our personal lives, but our professional lives. So we thank you for the opportunities and the individuals that have come together from the graduate programs, from the undergraduate programs, from the business community, and alums and staff and faculty. We pray that you would be with us tonight. We have already had fellowship, and it's fun to meet new people and to share stories and to make connections. And we pray that you would be with us in our conversations, and that you would be with us as Kurt is speaking to us, that we would hear what you have to say to us about what it means to be a Christian business person in today's world. So we thank you and pray that you would be with us through the rest of this evening. Amen.
Thank you, President McGee. Now, I'd like to take these few minutes to talk about John Warren. Mr. Warren was an alumnus here at ENC, and he graduated with the class of 1934. This event, held in his memory, would not be possible without his vision and success in business. Mr. Warren started the Warren Lightning Rod Company after his time at ENC, and led the production of lightning rods for much of the eastern United States. Mr. Warren also started this forum with the belief that an individual could be just as called to ministry as to business. And furthermore, he believed that there is no contradiction between faith and business practices. This forum is held to highlight these truths to our students and the Quincy business community.
And we will also like to take a moment to thank the Warren Lightning Rod Company for providing the funds to make this event possible. And I believe we have two individuals with us here tonight representing the company. Can I please have the president, Mr. Humanick, and the VP of Operations, Mr. Batchelder, stand in recognition. And now I have the opportunity in introducing our guest speaker for the evening, Mr. Kurt Heckman. Kurt Heckman graduated from ENC in 1984 with a BS in mathematics, and he worked in the engineering field for 12 years before becoming president and co-founder of Sycamore Services, a software service company that he started in 1996. Sycamore provided federal government and commercial clients with services such as software engineering and communication solutions, which provided aerospace and a lot of other things towards many other companies, such as General Electric and governmental agencies such as NASA. Additionally, for the past 15 years, Mr. Heckman has been developing vCalc, an online-based calculator that handles all your mathematical needs. It has an easy-to-use interface and a comprehensive database. It is an honor to have him here with us tonight. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Kurt Heckman.
I never sounded so good. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. It's truly an honor to come back to ENC and kind of haunted by this place. My wife and I sang to each other up on this stadium or auditorium when we were freshmen, and that's how she and I got together. We were both into music, and I was a math student. So it's an honor to be here today, and yes, I feel equally that it's the truth that you can be a called business person. I followed Christ all my life, made plenty of mistakes, probably some of the best ones right here, but the reality is I've always tried to serve Christ in my business, so I'll just tell you a little bit about that today. So there's my CV. We won't go too much into it, but I was blessed. I did run a company called Sycamore for a long time, and it was interesting. We were able to call, when you create a company, you get to give it the name that you want to, and we called it Sycamore. And we were an equal opportunity employer, did federal contracting work, and there's no such thing as a Christian company. We didn't sing Kumbaya at company lunches, but everybody in the company knew that I did my best to serve the Lord with my failings. And people would ask me, so where'd you get the name? And I said, well, there was this dishonest businessman that went up a sycamore tree, had a wonderful experience, and came down an honest businessman. So we tried to run our company with very high business ethics. And since I sold Sycamore in 2010, I started another company called vCalc, and I'd talk to you for hours and hours about that, but that's not why you're here. Well, I heard that the presentation topic that they wanted to really consider was innovation. We do live in a pretty wonderful time. I mean, there are major things happening. The innovations have really even just barely begun. I remember there was a time I heard that when Thomas Edison was getting close to his end of his life, people were thinking about closing down the patent office because clearly Mr. Edison's getting old and there's not going to be that many more patents. Can you imagine how short-sighted that is? And that's kind of what's going on right now. People say to themselves, well, where is innovation? Where are computers going to take us? And some people don't see where it's going, but quite frankly, we're still just at the tip of that iceberg. So what I wanted to do is talk to you a little bit about how innovations have helped me across, quite frankly, now 2 companies. And it basically all starts with a pretty basic thing that everyone learns in business in some capacity. And that is innovations come in when you start to understand your business processes. Now, already people are saying, oh, you gotta be kidding me, he's gonna talk about processes. But the truth is, that's where competition starts to leave everybody else behind. So what I like to talk about is, it doesn't matter whether your business is a high-tech aerospace company like mine, or quite frankly, 2 guys in a truck. The reality is you go through processes. You do things on a regular basis, whether it's, I gotta load the equipment, I've gotta drive to the site, I've gotta do certain things. There are a set of routines, processes that you go through. There's also processes that your customers go through. Whether, again, it's, they get up in the morning and they put out their trash cans, or no, they're gonna launch a rocket. Businesses and organizations have processes. And where innovation really starts to come in powerfully is when people start to understand those processes and try to improve them. So my advice to everybody is, regardless of what business you're in, start to think about what are the processes that we go through? What are the steps in my day? What is the cookbook that I have to go through to start a piece of my business, to end a piece of my business? What is that cookbook? That's your process. So I would encourage you to know them. Think about what are the steps that you do. I would encourage you to document them. Document the steps that you do, simply because if you don't lay it out, there's chances are you may be doing things you shouldn't. Furthermore, if for some reason you can't do those steps, who's going to be able to step in behind you and start to take over that work when you're sick or when you try to branch onto other things? Start to lay out the cookbook of what are the processes in your business. And then on a regular basis, scrutinize them. Say, you know what, I get up every day, I load the truck, and I go to this place, and I fill up gas at this place. When you start to look at your processes and say, well, you know, why am I getting my gas on the way to work? Because that makes my whole team wait. So as you start to look through your processes, all of a sudden, and evaluate, is that the right thing to do? Maybe some little step could be the thing that makes your organization a little bit more efficient than the next organization that you have to compete with. So scrutinize them and improve your processes as often as you can. And then, when you can, automate them. That's where we really are. We are in an interesting time. It's got its good cultural effects and it's got its bad cultural effects. There are people certainly that are losing their jobs to computers. That's been going on for decades and it's going to continue. However, sometimes computers can also help create jobs. So I would encourage you, because people who do not kind of step forward in automation processes when they can find themselves left out in the cold. So you can have whole industries that will quite frankly leave the United States, leave Massachusetts, simply because they fail to take that next step in business evolution, which is to try to start automating things. So successful entrepreneurs are problem solvers. So I kind of come from that background. I did not have a business degree. I took some business classes. I wish, quite frankly, that I took them a little more seriously. I was a math student, had a computer science minor, and I had a few accounting classes. As I was growing my companies, I really wish I had paid more attention and understood that. Fortunately, I was able to bring on real smart people to help me fill in those gaps in my own knowledge. But successful entrepreneurs are the ones who basically get in the mindset of solving problems in their own organization, but also in their customers. When I go off and I talk to a lot of colleges, and one of the things I offer to all the college students is I give out my resume, or not my resume, I give out my email address. I said, send me your resume. Even if you don't think you'll ever work for me, I'd be delighted to take a look at your resume. And invariably, one of the things I almost always talk in my response back to the students are, be a problem solver. Communicate how you are solving somebody's problem. And that's exactly where an entrepreneur is. An entrepreneur finds some problem out there. You know, no one pays us to look good, thank goodness, or I'd be bankrupt. You know, people, well, I guess there's a few people that get paid for looking good, but they're really rare. But 99% of the time, people pay you to improve their circumstances in some way. So that's what an entrepreneur does. They are a problem solver, and they improve situations. And innovations and efficiencies do pay off. So what I'd like to do is kind of walk through how my two businesses walk through an increasing pattern of improvement. So my first company was Sycamore. We started off, and this is a bottom-up scale, by the way. We were a subcontractor, a bunch of smart guys that I knew, and I got together, and we knew of a problem that, quite frankly, IBM in Gaithersburg, PA had, or Gaithersburg, Maryland had. And that was, they just won this big contract, and they didn't have enough of the people with the right skills to go do the work. So there was an opportunity. Okay, so again, by the way, let me say this. I think I'm a smart guy. I think I'm a hardworking guy. I know a lot of people that are a lot smarter and a lot harder working, and they have not had businesses that succeed. I do know that there are circumstances where good people still will fail. But if you want to be guaranteed to fail, then I would say don't be hardworking and don't try to improve things. But so let me just say that. A bunch of group of guys and I got together and we realized that there was this opportunity. We created a business. I would encourage everybody at some point in their life to consider incorporating. something that you do. If you're working for somebody else, think about what it'd be like to branch off in your own business. I've been very glad that I've done it. I've had employees of mine who've gone off and started their own company and left. I've had employees of mine who started their own company and stayed and did it on the side. And sometimes they help them to be better employees working with and for me. But we got together and we started to work as subcontractors. And one of the things I realized right away was I needed to improve my business base. On that first contract, they just needed extra bodies. Now, I tried to give them, this is another thing I try to tell people, give your customers as many reasons as possible to come to you. Okay? In our case, we were computer scientists. We knew how to program. In our case, this was a new satellite program. So we basically knew some things about aerospace technology, and it required certain credentials that only some of my staff had with government clearances. So it was really cool. So we had some criteria that I was able to be attractive to this customer. But we also knew that we were at the bottom of this scale. We were subcontractors on the premises. When they didn't need us anymore, thank you, you're out the door. And it really led to an environment where there was not necessarily longevity, not stability. One of the things, you want to create a business, you want to see it grow, you want to see it last for a while. And while we all try to work for profitability, and everybody would like to, swing for the, on the 90-mile-an-hour fastball and hit a home run on the first pitch, the reality is wealth is built a little bit of time over a long period of time. It was neat hearing about the Warren business, just working all these years. Good businesses take time to mature. So one of the things we said, you know what, let's not be crazy profitable, let's keep our rates low, and let's get into the long game. Let's make ourselves attractive to this customer for a long time by being a very good value and go with a little bit of profit. So that helped. But even so, we still knew, even though they liked us, even though we were solving technical problems for them, we knew, one, I needed to get other contracts. So if they ever said, hey, we need you to staff down, I needed to have other work. So one of the things that we did was we started to find other contracts. And we tried to get better and better relations. So let me kind of walk you through this. As a subcontractor, you're just kind of surge. But we were one of these special contractors. We did work with the federal government, and there's a bunch of different categories, everything from woman-owned to minority-owned to Native American to serviceman-owned. I didn't fit into any of those categories, but I was able to set up a business that was called Hubzone. It stands for Historically Underutilized Business Zone. I would have you consider that program. It's interesting. The Small Business Administration will tell you a lot of information on how that can help you get contracts, et cetera. So I would encourage you to look at that. But we realized that that actually improved it. When we went from just being a subcontractor to a hub zone, all of a sudden our opportunities started to increase because the big contractors had yet another reason to come to us. And when they started to downscale, they still wanted that hub zone credit. So quite frankly, they let some of my competitors go and kept me around. Well, that was good. The other thing too is sometimes you have to come at the bottom to start to build your corporate resume, if you will. So we got to work at IBM, had some good credentials, so that when I went and knocked on the door at Orbital Sciences right up the road, said, hey, I'm currently doing business down here at IBM, the fact that I had that credential on my corporate resume gave me some credibility, helped me get into it. So now all of a sudden I didn't have all my eggs in one basket. So that was important. And then once I started to get some credibility, then I was able to start to work and become an associate contractor. The difference there was I started to have these relationships with my prime contractors to where when they went off and started to bid on new work, I actually was able to help them write the proposals up front and get involved in their effort for them to get new work as a subcontractor still. But now, since I was involved up front, I had a teaming agreement. I was now not just some surge that came after the fact when they needed a little more help. I was part of the plan. So now I had a contractual agreement with them to go from the beginning to the end of whatever their contract was. I had that agreement because I helped up front. I became an associate subcontractor. Still good. But I realized, I looked at the Lockheed Martins, the IBMs, the big companies. I said, you know what, someday I kind of want to be more like them. And if you think about it, being a prime contractor as a service company was kind of where I wanted to go. Because I knew for every dollar I charged them, they charged their customer for my services $1.50. So they were able to put their markup on top of me. So I said, boy, someday I hope I'm the, instead of being the tails on the coin, I want to be heads. So I said to myself, what do we have to do? So I started to keep track of opportunities as I was growing my corporate resume, look for opportunities where I was the prime. And again, we were in high-tech stuff, but think about it. Regardless of what your business is, sometimes you sail in and you're the subcontractor. Again, go back to 2 guys in a truck. Someone else got the contract to renovate, Eastern Nazarene College's, all our landscaping. Whoever got that prime contract is picking up those subcontractors. And as those subcontractors gain skills, they've got now the opportunity to come in and say, hey, I understand the whole process. It's not just what I do, spreading gravel, it's also planting flowers. And I've learned some credentials there. So basically, I started to look at the whole process that my customer was going through and learned all the different steps, figured out where I was weak, would bring in team members, so that eventually I started to build the skills to where I could then become the prime. So that was really great. Again, and it took years. It took us 5 years of operations, and I submitted proposals probably in year 2 to be a prime. Sit down, kid, before you hurt yourself. You don't have, as a company, enough experience. Finally, we got to where we won our first prime contract. Now, again, for us, our first prime contract came because we were one of these special government entities, this Hubzone program, where we got the first Hubzone contracts at the National Security Agency, at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and also at Ginnie Mae. Kind of like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae. And it was because we were this special category. And I said, that's good. Now we were the prime. Now we had much more control on how the work was going to be executed. And if I did need to bring on subs, I was going to actually make money on them. There's a ton of goodness on that, by the way. It helps cash flow, it helps all kinds of things. And at this point, when you're the prime, not only are you showing your technical credentials, but you're also really starting to show your management credentials. Any proposal that I've ever written typically had 3 sections. It had technical, how are you going to solve their problem? Then it had cost, how much is that going to cost? And then it had schedule and management. So basically, as we became the prime, we started to get better. We were already really good programmers and scientists, but as we started to grow our business, we started to get better on the business side of it and how to manage things. And again, that went back to finding out what were the processes necessary to do and maturing our capability and all that. But I knew someday, I was no longer going to be a small business. I knew we would eventually grow. And I wanted to get more and more prime contracts because I knew one of 2 things was going to be true. I was going to grow up to the limit that I'm a small business, which is the Hubzone piece that I was in. And at which point I needed to burst through that and go off and try to be a Lockheed Martin or a big company. Or at that point, I knew if I couldn't compete, that's the time to package the company for sale. And that's what ended up happening with us. But I knew that our value of our company was going to be more based upon how mature our contracts were. So that's where we kept trying to get better and better prime contracts. And for us, one of the big criteria was, where could we do the work? If I had to do the work at my customer site, they had their rules, they covered their costs, they paid for the lighting, etc. And a lot more was under their control. But when I got to do it in my facility, I was able to do it more efficiently, cover more of my costs. So we kept track, and we kept trying to bid things in our own facility. And that thing made things better. And then ultimately, we wanted to get our full and open prime contracts where we said, you know what, let's go into this competition and not claim we're a small business, not claim we're a Hubzone. Let's try to go and compete like one of the big boys. And fortunately, we got one good contract that way the year we sold. And that was the big criteria. So when the company bought us, they still valued some of this other business we were doing, but they liked the fact that we had some prime contracts that they could continue as a big business. And by the way, this is when we started to realize some of our innovations. We started to realize that if we had our own in-house capabilities that we could take to our customers and integrate our software into their solution, that provided a leg up for us. Because we were able to say, hey, instead of building this thing from scratch that you need, take this thing that we have that's 20% there already, and we'll charge you either nothing for it as a competitive advantage, or we'll make you pay a small premium for it. So that helped us get into that innovation where we started to have customized products. So my first company, I got out right about here, okay? But one of the things that was interesting, once we realized that there was this scale, I started to ask my accountant people that work for me, let's start track how our company is doing for revenue and backlog along these criteria. So I would literally say, okay, how did we do for this quarter in revenue and backlog and profitability on our subcontracts? And then the ones that are preferred, or where were the associates? So I started to keep track of this information and said, hey, we're getting kind of heavy here. What do we have to do to move it on up, move it on up? Because eventually we wanted to get as much work as we can up here because we knew that was the most value to someone who would eventually acquire us as a company. And we did start to get a little bit into software products. That's when I sold the company, had a little bit of money to be able to go off and work on something. That's when we created our next company, which was purely a product company. And in that case, we thought that it would be kind of neat to have turnkey software, which then became web-enabled software. Often companies will have, in our case, computer programs that, like I talked to you, they'll take and they'll integrate into your system. But the reality is they'll say it's a product. They're customizing it for you every time. That's fine, that's a good business model, but it's expensive. Ideally though, they want to sell you software that you just take yourself and you install and you are off and running, because that's less expensive for them to use, it's less expensive for you to produce. And then ultimately, in this day and age, now we're getting to more and more things on the web, and that's what my current company is called, vCalc. We're creating a capability that already people in over 60 countries are using it, and it's on the web. I wake up and all of a sudden I say, oh look, I've got users in Tajikistan, or places I've never even heard of before, and that's really cool, and it's a really good business model in that regard. So what we did is we just tried to constantly improve our business. So that's what I would encourage you to do. Think about your business on a regular basis. Think about the different processes that you go through. Now, I know I'm probably a bit of a tortured soul, but I can never really turn the business off in my head. So even when I was out on my tractor cutting my grass or plowing snow, which we do a lot of in Western Maryland, or when I was, sitting watching TV and there was a commercial break, all of a sudden I started to think about the business, which is a blessing and a curse. The blessing is I was constantly always kind of looking at ways to do it better. And that's one of the key things that I think is what the Lord blessed. All right. So my advice to you is, with your business, constantly improve it. Even if things are going very well for you, always be scrutinizing your business. What can I do to make my business better? What can I do to constantly improve it? Secondly, I ran Sycamore for just about 15 years. I didn't plan to sell it from day one. But we started to think about it after about 10 years, because quite frankly, I was getting tired. I was working, crazy hours, etc. But all of a sudden, when I started to think about, someday we may want to sell it, I became a better businessman. Because all of a sudden, there were some things in my business that we had been doing that quite frankly didn't make sense. When they stood up to the scrutiny of, if somebody else takes this over, they're going to throw that away. Well, why aren't we throwing that away? So even if you're not thinking about selling your business anytime in the near future, I would ask you to consider it. Consider what you would have to do in order to package your business to be for sale, and start to head down that path. And then the last 2 points are so important. Never sell your principles. The reality is, what is success? Is success having millions and millions of dollars, having world fame? We see those people shoot themselves in the head. We see those people commit suicide. We see those people with ruined families. We see those people that should be elated. According to the world's equation, happiness equals more money. But the reality is, happiness is being content with yourself and being content with your maker. For me, I always try to put things into perspective, and occasionally I've lost that perspective. But for me, I have been my happiness, and sometimes during terrible business times, when I said to myself, you know what, I'm doing what I think I should. I'm doing what I'm convinced is right. I'm doing what I think is the moral thing to do. I'm doing the things that I think is pleasing God in my life. So when you work for a higher cause, maybe you won't have the ultimate success. Maybe I could have got more money out of Sycamore if I started to treat my employees terribly and just cranked up profits. Maybe my new business could make money if somehow we steal your data on the internet. I don't know. I couldn't sleep at night. I would much rather put my head on my pillow, thank the Lord for a good day, and still be able to succeed as a business. But I also think that makes good business sense in the long time. If you ever want good business advice, I would encourage you to read the book of Proverbs. It was written by King Solomon, but as I'm reading this as a business person, I'm saying, that's really good advice. Throughout, there's all kinds of just good wisdom about treating people, how to treat them, how to be wise in your dealings, how honesty is an efficiency. That was one thing. At Sycamore, we made a ton of mistakes, but we tried to be scrupulously honest. And the net result was that we had an efficiency that was huge. I did not have to go through extracted paperwork with lawyers when I wanted to do something with a new manager or promote somebody or even give them stock, because they knew if I said I was going to do something, they took me in faith. I knew that if they committed to something, I took them on faith. And people basically had so much more efficiency because you said you'd get that done by Tuesday. If it wasn't going to be done by Tuesday, I usually got a call on Monday saying, Tuesday's looking a little dangerous, Kurt. I thought I was going to get it done because we had fostered this environment of honesty, and it really, really paid off. So I would encourage you to invite God into your business. At the end of the day, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I personally believe that even though the Lord did bless my first business, I'm hoping He blesses my second one as well. But even if He doesn't, I'm very glad that I have this kind of opportunity where I can stand in front of people and say, you know what? Whether it's a success in your eyes or not, I'm working, quite frankly, for somebody else. And I'm very happy about that. And at the end of the day, that's what I intend to do. So that's the end. So I thank you for that opportunity. Any questions? I'm used to talking to this kind of environment with college students. Any questions about any of that? Or about that? Yeah, sure.
What was the turning point that decided in order to sell? Not to continue your growth?
I lost all my hair. No. It was about that time, though. I realized that the company was growing, but not at kind of, in satellite talk, they talk about escape velocity. You put the rocket up, and if it's going fast enough, it'll actually get out of the effects of the low Earth orbit. We weren't on that kind of a velocity. I knew I was not going to be able to swim with the big fish. That I was going to be in a situation where, because we had reinvested all of our discretionary budgets into taking care of our people, which I thought was the right thing to do, we were not the price point that I knew was going to be able to go head to head against some of the big companies. And we had not spent a lot of money on R&D. Again, we spent our money, I had to, and they're still around, which is really cool. The company that bought us, I knew some of my employees would leave, some had, but I talked to them not too long ago, and out of all the companies that they bought, the employees that stayed on were mine, which I was really pleased about. And I still meet my old employees on a regular basis, and they come up and they hug me. And it's like, oh man, I remember that was so good. So I'm grateful for that. So, but for me, it was that. And plus, I prayed. But also it became pretty obvious that that's what I needed to do from a common sense standpoint. Other questions? Did it make sense about processes that it doesn't matter? I mean, we were in high-tech stuff, but the fact is, I split my own firewood. And I put my wheelbarrow on a certain spot just to help me split my firewood and get it stacked without me having to kill myself. Because it's a process. I thought about, what's the better way to do this? Oh, I'm going to get that truck to back down to here, because again, it helped me do more work more efficiently. Other questions? All right, well, thank you so much. Yes, sir.
You mentioned, sir, that you are now in debt and connected to Pakistan, for example, and product being sold there. And but you mentioned you are mostly following the Christ teaching. And in the global sense, you are Pakistan and Israel and China. And it's a conflict in business and following the logic.
It's a great question.
And how do you go about resolving the conflict?
Here's where I have always drawn the line. I alluded to it earlier. There's no such thing as a Christian company. Thank God. When I get in heaven, last thing I want to see is some corporate logo. So I always drew the line that the company is a company. I am its president. I am going to behave according to the morals that I have been taught, that I have been raised in. And my employees, if they come and ask me for personal advice, well, guess where I go? Similar with our new capability that we're putting out on the web, it's math. And it's tools to do industry work, it's tools to do academic work, and by and large, it is neither moral nor immoral. Now, granted, we have put in some guidelines, like we're not going to allow people to upload pornography and things like that, you know, because we have the capacity that people can upload pictures to go with the mathematical equations and whatnot. So we do have some standards that we put out there, but that doesn't conflict, quite frankly, with anybody of any belief being able to use our system comfortably without feeling scrutiny. So the line I always drew for me was, the company's a good company. And when you ask me to talk about the company, I'll talk about the company. But when you ask me to talk about me, I'm going to talk about my Savior. So that's kind of where I drew that line. And it's been good. I get invited to places that, quite frankly, they like hearing about the math. They don't want to hear about the rest of it, so that ends pretty quickly, and that's fine, and I'm okay with that. But the other thing, too, is in my history, I've always appreciated people of a variety of faiths and backgrounds that had high ethics. I was able to respect that. Quite frankly, I had a couple friends who were, you know, they came to my Bible study with me, and, you know, and were always there and said all the right things, and they were crummy at work. And they were like, Kurt, why don't you hire me? I'm like, because you're not good. You know, because to me, I have been called to excellence in what I do. And certainly I fail at times, but the reality is I'd rather work with, quite frankly, I got a friend who's an Orthodox Jew, wonderful man, and he was so funny. He said to me one time, I'd rather work with a committed Christian than with a wishy-washy person of his faith. And I said to him, wow, I can't believe you just said that, because I just said to somebody else, I'd rather work with you than with this other person, even though you and I have different religious backgrounds, because he's honest, and I was able to have a good working relationship with him. So I don't know if that's a separation. I'm still who I am in the office place, but I still think, I mean, those kind of the rules we have to play in right now. Certainly as a federal contractor, it was never even remotely a stick that I would even dream of beating somebody else with, trying to impose my views on anybody. But it was a stick that I was willing to let them beat me with. Oh yeah, Kurt, you're thinking about cutting our health care benefits? Well, where does that stand up on your high moral values? I had to live under that scrutiny and work through, you know, what is the right thing to do? So again, it always was more of a burden on me than I think I ever put on anybody else. I try to go to great pains to not put it on a burden, because I think that's counterproductive. As a Christian, history has shown people who've tried to compel people to be Christians. It's called the Inquisition, you know. That didn't work, you know. It's dumb, and it's not, I don't think that's what God would be glorified by. My attitude is treat people fairly, do unto others as you would have them do to you. You know, if someone asks you to walk a mile, walk 2. You know, that's when all of a sudden your walk reflects your business ethic and your talk, then people start to take you a little more seriously. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What did you consider to be your primary challenges as a business entrepreneur?
Well, personal issues certainly were the case. The bigger your company gets, that was funny, my kids would say to me, Daddy, what do you do for a living? I write emails for a living, and today I think 10 people were a little less unhappy. So certainly the biggest challenge were working people-related issues. When people would call me, there were two people that scared me to death, and that was my head of HR and my head of security. If they called me and say, hey, Kurt, we need to talk, I'm like, cancel that meeting, I gotta go do this. So it was dealing, quite frankly, with people issues, so that was one. I'd say the other one was just the business environment. It's tougher. It's definitely getting tougher. I know some really great, smart, hardworking people whose businesses have folded. So you've got to constantly be working on it. And what's that one? The proverb says, little rest, little folding of hands, little slumber, and disaster's on you. So quite frankly, I had some sleepless nights at times thinking about how to solve problems. So I would say just, again, trying to stay competitive. I will tell you, my new business, vCalc, I set up operations in Nairobi. So I do have, even though I'm spending 5% of my budget, I've had employed a fair number of people there. And I'm excited about that. I don't think I'm a bad American. I've spent the bulk of my investment money here in the United States, and I'm hopefully, because of the work that I'm doing in Nairobi, I'll be able to create more jobs here. But again, it's just the environment we're in, and I try to do it ethically and try to think it through, and quite frankly, provide the best jobs I can in Nairobi. So, I don't know if that answered your question. Other questions? And you're all been great. The fact that I'm standing between you and dinner, and that you're all still smiling and that no one has fallen asleep is pretty wonderful. So I guess that's it. Thank you so much.